wish someone had taught me these things before I moved abroad alone. Hi, my name is Celine. I'm from Indonesia and I came to Taiwan 4 years ago and I lived here ever since. Living alone has changed the way I think, the way I work, and even the way I see people. And here are the things that living alone had taught me about life. First, living alone doesn't solve your problem. When I was younger, I thought, if I can go abroad, then my life could be better. Yes, it's kind of true, but when I started living alone, I realized that you bring yourself everywhere you go. For example, if I like to be late in my home country, then I would be late often here in Taiwan. If I'm afraid to put in consistent work in Indonesia, then I would also be afraid of consistent work here in Taiwan. If I'm not ready for a relationship and I don't want to work it out, then I will not be ready for a relationship here in Taiwan. So the lesson I learned is changing the country does not change who you are, and personal growth comes from working on yourself. I thought that, oh, I'm going to be more extroverted here in Taiwan since I'm very introverted in Indonesia, but no! In Taiwan, I'm also is introvert, but however, a little bit more extroverted. The next thing I learned is that living alone had taught me to respect different ways of thinking, but not necessarily to follow them. Before living abroad, most of the people around me had similar backgrounds. I was taught what is wrong and what is right. Then after living alone, I met people from different backgrounds, different upbringing, different culture. Then I thought, wow, I got so much to learn. I thought I need to learn more experiences. I could have different values. I could have different opinions, but then it broke me. So the lesson I learned here is that just because someone thinks differently doesn't mean it's better for me, and it doesn't mean that they're wrong. One of the biggest lessons from living abroad is learning to listen, not judge, and not follow, and just be myself and be the version that I am most comfortable in. The third thing I learned is that living abroad had made me prouder to be an Indonesian. Funny enough, I appreciated Indonesia more after leaving it. Things I used to take for granted: Indonesian food, Indonesian hospitality, Indonesian culture, Indonesian humor. Now I talk about Indonesian culture to Taiwanese people. I created content about Indonesia. Well, the lesson that I learned here is that the grass is not always greener on the other side. The next thing I learned is that language opened doors more than the way I expected. I originally learned Mandarin just for fun. I learned English, and I never imagined it would be my career here. And just being able to speak Mandarin, it is like my identity here. So I am the Indonesian who speaks fluent Chinese here. So I am quite easy to survive here alone. The next thing I learned is that nobody is coming to save you. When something is wrong in Indonesia, I can ask my parents or my friends, and especially my parents, they would go a long way to help me and to save me. But in Taiwan, I had to figure out everything out by myself. And the lesson that I learned here is that independence is built through responsibility. And I am becoming more and more independent and more confident because of it. So, living alone abroad taught me that growth rarely happens when life is comfortable. It happens when you're lost, you're challenged, when you're forced to figure out your things, when you're forced to figure things out on your own. And some of the hardest moments of my life become the moments that taught me the most. And that's why, despite all the struggles, I wouldn't trade this journey for anything, because it helped me discover a version of myself that I never knew existed.